In 1994, a British rock star released a scary promise he made to a documentary crew. He wanted Phil Collins's head on his fridge by the end of the decade. He really did call Phil the Christ of music, but he wasn't the only one. A grunge star said he'd only wear tie-dye if Phil's pee was used to color it. A reality TV judge was called mean by Phil, was made fun of by even his childhood hero. Him in public, the person who sold 150. It's not clear how Million Records became the most. Phil Collins was the most hated musician living. Born in Chiswick on January 30, 1951, West London, where his mom June worked as his father Greville was a theatre director, was an insurance agent who Phil was formed by his creativity and structure. From the start, his mom's job meant talk about show business was normal at home. Actors' performance times and plans for stages were part of the dinner talk. He grew hearing about how the company worked, how to deal with agents behind the scenes, how to find a good deal, how to run a crowd without Phil being aware of it, getting a lesson behind the scenes and fun things to do before he could write a full speech. Back then, when they were only 5 years old, he got a toy drum kit because something clicked, and it made him angry that this wasn't Phil. Was just a kid banging on plastic. Gift on a family event that same year, he joined a talent show at Butlins. Behind him, the musicians started to play. They were in the wrong key though. Phil told them to stop right there. Artists, they were off, and he was right. 5 years old, correcting people who have been trained. People couldn't believe it, but Phil missed something important that was shown. Just hearing music helped him understand time and guts, and the pitch stood out, and from no one saw him that day. The same way, by the time he was a teenager, Phil already had a show in front of a lot of people. Saw him play the Artful Dodger. When Oliver was put on stage in London, a tough part that called for both charm and swagger, he was also in as an extra in 1964, the Beatles released A Hard Day's Night. After that, he filmed parts of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, but they were cut. That was his first look at how bad the entertainment world might be like. Even if you did all the right things for your work, still not make the cut. Phil didn't just act in school. He also started making bands for the first time. The Real Thing was the name of the group. They didn't mess around, that much was clear. He was in the early band Freehold that he wrote his first song called Lying Crying Dying. It had a big title, but the feelings were real. It proved he wasn't just like a drummer or an actress. He had stories to tell. And he told them this through music. Was the start of Phil Collins, the composer, lead singer and artist. There was a moment that changed everything. Phil was flipping on June 28, 1970, by reading Melody Maker at a friend's house when he saw the ad said that a band was looking for a drummer who likes acoustic music. That band was playing music and a 12-string guitar. Phil was only 19 years old when he showed up at the house where Peter Gabriel grew up in Surrey. He had to wait 6 hours for the test, played and sang background singing, and just hired him because he got along with the group. It wasn't enough for $10 a week to live on, so he kept his job at a music store shop for a while, but he was in and between Genesis and between 1971 and 1973. Phil worked on 3 songs that defined the prog rock era of Genesis. In October 1971, Baby Crime was the first case. His playing the drums on the Music Box, a 23-minute track that became famous. Then came Foxtrot in 1972, where he played on Soup's Ready, a song that many fans called the best of its kind. It ran for change time and took more than 20 minutes. Signatures always 44/78, and even 908. And in 1973, Phil kept it all together. It was a hit song to sell England by the pound. 3 on the UK charts for Battle of in Epping Forest. He used 47 drums. Tools like the Tony vibraphone, and even kitchen. That at this point he wasn't just as a drummer, he was great with sticks. But in August 1975, General hit a wall, and Peter Gabriel didn't come back. No one knew if the band would make it. Sparked a huge audition process. To 400 people came to find a new singer. Everyone had to sing 3 difficult songs. Genesis records that they added names to like Fish and Mick Strickland from. However, the answer was sitting. Phil had been behind the drums the whole time, backup for years. And when he stepped up to try lead singing, on February 3rd, something clicked once more. 1976, he tried out for real 4 hours later. It was done with his version of In the Cage. The band Chills the Truth. They had held on to him for 3 weeks just to make sure. What most people didn't know was that during the whole thing, Phil had a second life that he joined. Brand X was a jazz fusion band in 1975, taking notes on Wind and Weathering with God by day. He would practice or play with Brand X at night. He played the drums for 18 hours straight until their first record came out because of him. In 1976, there was time for unusual behavior signs like 1716 and 238, for his solo on in 1977. The song Why Should I Lend You Mine? 12, and musicians were shocked by it was one of the hardest drum parts in the history of jazz fusion that Phil Collins didn't make plans to become a big star. In the 1980s, it began with heartbreak early in 1979. He married Andrea Bertoelli, passed out and went back to his English home in Sariri, that is empty and lonely, and lost. But instead of breaking down, he turned pain into song and dragged an 1820s piano into the bedroom, and put in a music machine. There wasn't a band, there were no interruptions while Phil worked. His life was a mess by February 13, 1981, just one day before. On Valentine's Day he put out Face Value. His first record by himself wasn't very good. It wasn't sweet, it was real and full. The song In the Air Tonight Makes Me Feel hit people in the chest like a punch. By August it had reached a high point of Noor. On the Hot 100, Diana Ross and Lionel. No one was upset by Richie's Endless Love. Different said everything while the world-famous love story Collins tore it down. With heavy drums and haunting, it wasn't normal for those drums to be quiet, and in fact, they were a mistake. The sound was made in a studio in Shepherd's Bush, where Collins was making music with Peter Gabriel and Hugh Pogum, the manager. I left a microphone on by mistake. That was only for small talk, but what the mic was magic when it came out of it. Squished and gated, stopping the adding an echo to each drum hit makes not a bomb that anyone had ever seen. They had heard drums like that before they what it did to In the Air Tonight. And the sound called out to the world. The sound of gated reverb became linked to Collins, used it again in the 1980s for pop and rock. I Don't Care What Happens in Against All Odds. Genesis used it again in Mama Soon. Until the 9S came out, everyone copied it. Bands wanted more at that time once more. But painters still work today like Lorde and Beyoncé bring that sound back to show how far Collins is. He made a mistake and didn't stop there, and in 1982, he put out Hello I Must Be Going. A record full of soul rhythms and heart. It got to number 2 in the UK and 8 in the US for his version of You Can't Hurry Love, was the number 1 song, and then came No Jacket Required in Britain. 1985, and that changed everything. Collins got rid of the sadness this time, themes he wanted something happy. Sting and Peter Gabriel were brought in for added background voices and a dance feel. This record was number 1 on the charts for 5 weeks in the UK, and 7 weeks in the. It sold more than 12 million copies in the US, America, and won 3 Grammys. Such as Record of the Year. That year Collins had 3 number 1 hits by himself. In 1985, more than anyone else in the US. From 1984 to 1990 he could not be stopped. He had 13 US top 10 hits, gave him his first solo Against All Odds, number 1 in the US. The song won him a butt. The Oscars didn't pick him, 10 to Los Angeles Ready to Play. But Collins, they picked a dancer instead. He laughed about it on stage and people never forgot. Years until 1977 when the movie Then There Were Three. Follow You Follow Me broke into it. Was the UK top 10 and the US top 40, it was catchy, soft and pop to die for. And for true Genesis fans it was an insult. It was the same people who knew 10-minute songs about imaginary they were now beasts and dying kings. Getting easy love songs that had hurt and wouldn't go away. Genesis had always a guy band that was too male-heavy and happily not-for-profit under Collins that made their new sound come in a larger group of people, especially women. The band was getting more famous, but to early fans thought they were going to lose. Then Invisible Touch came into their souls. 1986, it was a full-on pop record and it blew up the number 1 hit for the title track. One on the first Billboard Hot 100 did not do that before the album. In the US it sold over 6 million copies, just 1.2 million more in the UK. 5 some songs from that record made it to the top 5. In America 5, A Land of Chaos, Letting Go of Everything, in Too Deep Tonight. All the chart monsters take the stage tonight. Later Collins said that the title song came from Sheila E.'s The Beautiful. He wanted to write his own story of It's funny that the track came from a jam session with just the band having fun. Collins made that song his own. Mike Rutherford, one of my favorites, called it a great song, fun to play, and the fans were split, but July's numbers didn't lie. 19 Invisible Touch was number 1 on the charts on 1, right behind it at number 2. Peter Gabriel's Sledgehammer, one band, 2 frontmen on the charts right after each other. It seemed like the past and present of Genesis were in a fight, one time lost. But everyone has to pay to win. In the mid-1980s, Phil Collins had become bigger than Genesis's first album. Face Value was number 1 in the UK for 3 weeks, and peaked at number 7 in the air tonight. Was a big hit all over the world. That eerie percussive break. That was it. More albums. Hello I Have to Go and No Jacket Required, but really all with multiple silver awards. No Jacket Required 4 top 10 hits, 2 of which were number 1s. He wasn't just doing well. He was being in charge. By the end of the decade, Collins had more songs in the top 40 in the US more than anyone else. When Genesis came out late 1985 to make, Collins had to make sure that Invisible touched those. He wasn't leaving. I'm happy, he said, with what we're doing now, but everyone was aware that it would end soon. In 1996, Collins finally left. Mike said Rutherford later said that he was surprised that he stayed as long as he didn't. A lot of people really liked the results. Many people didn't like it. Collins became the poster boy for giving up, but he didn't just join the crowd, he said. Took it over. People began to get. By 2010 he was sick of him and said, I'm sorry that everything went so well. I really didn't want it to happen like that. The hate wasn't hidden either. And Patrick Bateman yells in American Psycho about Phil Collins before he killed someone. The message was clear. Collins had come to stand for everything people didn't like: 80s pop. Even South Park joined by making fun of him as a failed star. Pleasant if you were taking medicine. Phil Collins looked up to the Beatles as a child. So when he finally met Paul McCartney he took her to Buckingham Palace in 2002. Brings something unique, a first edition of the Beatles' life story looking for a same thing. But instead of warmth, McCartney smiled and told his wife Heather, our little Phil is a bit of a big fan of the Beatles. That one line hit like a slap. Collins was shocked, but it didn't work. It seemed like he was making fun of him, being made fun of for liking someone. The music he grew up listening to. He said he would never forget that moment. In his words, UFA made it worse. Collins said afterward that McCartney had a feeling of superiority when they finally reached out, it wasn't really to say sorry. Collins said it felt more. But for him that was like, let's move on. Comment had been around for too long. He wasn't just angry, he was hurt. And when you work in a field where ego is a small dig can turn into a lot of money. Had a fight with Simon Cowell for a year, but not get off easy either. In 2005, Collins made it clear that he didn't like Cowell or his harsh style. I don't have time. He said that Simon Cowell is mean. Cowell had one event that stuck with him. I told a woman who sang on boats, I don't go on a boat where you were singing. That to Collins it wasn't criticism, it was shame. Turned down offers to be on talent show. He liked shows like American Idol. They were dull platforms where art it didn't matter. He said going in, what being on one of those shows would be like hitting my head against the wall. For Collins, it wasn't just the cover, it was what he stood for, a factory-style system that pulled people apart to make stars. After that came Brit Pop, which had teeth. Noel Gallagher, lead singer of Oasis, aimed at Collins personally in the early 1990s. Gallagher declared war on. He came up with the name McDonald's Music Phil. He said that Collins and Sting were at the I Want the Chopped Head at the top of that list. Of Phil Collins in my fridge by the end of this decade, he told a film crew in 1994. If I haven't already, I'll be a later failure. Gallagher eased up a bit. He said he was being dramatic, but he never really stopped calling Collins as the one who will destroy music. He also didn't hold back. He said the Oasis brothers were really bad guys, rude and not as good at what they say they are. And he still said he liked he rolled his eyes at music while their action wasn't just about you. Britpop fans of all ages wanted it. Rebels. And Collins was a polished pop star. Kurt Cobain had his from the old guard own view, and it was harsh. In 1992. In an interview, the lead singer of Nirvana went on a rage that made everything Collins stood for. He made fun of white male soul and horns. And he said he hated tie-dye clothes unless, as he joked, they were colored with Phil Collins's urine and Cobain's blood. From Jerry Garcia, didn't dislike Collins as a person. What he stood for in commercial songs that was fake and empty in his eyes. It wasn't just about taste. It was also about, for Cobain, Collins' principles were the sign. Grunge tried to set fire to everything down. And even though they never fought, when they talked face to face, Cobain's words stuck with him. Collins had a plan to end an age. Its face was there, but Collins's there was pain in private as well as public places. His marriages were rocky, and divorces were even worse than he is now. Got married 3 times, the first time ending in 1980, and the second one in 1996, or cost him $17 million, or about $34 million. But the most sad to say, he got divorced in 2008. It cost him 46 quadra 76 to get from Orion Civy. million at the time. It was the biggest British divorce deal for a famous person in the past, even McCartney's famous The amount Heather Mills got paid was less, and Collins lost about $84 million altogether in it. There are almost a third of divorce deals his whole wealth, but the news wasn't about that. They said he wasn't lucky in love, but after what happened, things got worse. Briefly making up with CV in the late 2010s, she dumped him over text message and married someone else in Las Vegas. The real twist was that she wouldn't give him $40 million. Home in Miami with her new husband report that she hired an armed husband. Security cams were blocked by guards, and Collins said they changed the locks. Putting together a takeover, CVI in turn asked for $20 million, saying Collins had he promised her half the value of the house denied it. The court case went on for a long time, until 2022, a judge threw out Stevie's claims after she constantly broke the law, a court order, but the damage was already done. Collins had been shamed in public. Once more, the woman he used to trust had threatening to make private news that if he didn't pay, it wasn't no longer. Was it just divorce? It was war, and then Phil Collins's daughter was there. Now a star in her own right has spoken, being honest about how tense their relationship is. When she was young, her parents split up. Collins wasn't seen much, and the not being there left scars. In her 2017 book, I Forgive You for Not Always, she wrote, "For always being there for me," she said. Talked about the worry about eating and the mental void that was left by because her dad was quiet. He may have still been alive, but most of the time it felt like he was never there. It was raw. It hurt, but it was the truth. And it got better over time. As they started to repair, Lily stood next to her dad at the last Genesis show. He was her hero, but the road, it had a long back and still has the weight of what was lost behind all of. This is what led to the fame, wealth, resentments, and the rumor was a man not being able to hold himself together. Collins lost his job after his third divorce. Away from them, he started drinking early in the morning, at 11 a.m. Wine, and after that vodka almost killed him. He developed people with pancreatitis, had nerve damage, and Phil finally couldn't drum any longer. Collins was more than just a rock star, made a name for itself on both the in 1988, he was on the charts, and in movies. Were brave enough to act with the ass Buster Edwards in the movie Buster. He was a person who helped carry out the movie about the Great Train Robbery of 1963, did well, especially in the US, where it brought in more than $540,000. But the thing that really took off was the Collins's version of A Groovy Mood Kind of Love, became a huge hit. It got to #1 in the UK, and in the US, another song from the movie Two Hearts also had the most sales in the US. It topped the charts and even won a Golden Globe. Collins had done something he was a hit actor and a hit all at once, just over 10 years ago. In 1999 he had another big day. Collins worked on the cartoon movie Tarzan. He wrote and played You'll Be in My Heart in a Soft Way. Feel-good song that won the heart of the movie. The song stayed at #1 on the chart for adult current music for 19 weeks, and it won him an Oscar in 2000 for Best Unique Song. What made it even better was that he didn't just record it in English. Collins sang the song himself in French, German, and Italian, Spain, and English that helped Tarzan. The music became a worldwide hit, more than 2.5 million units in the US alone. He had done something not many people ever win an Oscar or a Grammy. Collins didn't win an Oscar or a Golden Globe. He should stop getting lead parts or big awards. In 1985 he loved to surprise people. Showed up in Miami Vice as a stylish con artist. Fans of the artist didn't think they'd see a rock legend in a crime show, but he did a great job. After a few years he made a quick show up in Spielberg's Hook as an officer. It was short but fun. And he became darker, and the band was in a movie about AIDS crisis. He played the owner of a San Diego bathhouse, a part that showed he wasn't scared of anything awful or these interviews are about controversial topics. Collins wasn't just messing around. As this showed, he was very flexible in the roles he played, from humor to drama to everything else, and even when he wasn't being filmed. His music was heard in movies over and over again. He wrote Look Through My Eyes for TV in 2003. Hello Disney's Brother Bear, a Grammy was given to the music award and sold more than 500,000 copies. Copies in the US, where he also showed up on them. He played himself in one of The Simpsons episode. And of course his famous song in Even more people knew about the air tonight, thanks to that wonderful monkey playing drums in a 2007 Cadbury ad. He kept having his songs play in show ads, and movies show that his sound never. I really took a step back and looked at what scenes in which his body was breaking down. He played the drums since they were 50 years back against a drum kit and leaning forward. He finally broke his spinal cord in 2007. During a Genesis tour, he hurt his shoulder, one of his neck bones that was starting to get really bad nerve damage. They couldn't even hold drumsticks right. He had to tape them together at one point to his hands just to play. By his late 60s, he had to give up. Playing the drums only for someone who they were was built on beat that even though the loss was terrible, he didn't. He quit because he had major surgery in 2009, and again in 2016, but things didn't get better. So much that he got drop foot, a condition that made it hard for him to walk. He had to use a cane in 2019. He even fell falling backwards off a chair at a show. Still, he kept going, he changed, and he started performing. Fans who were sitting were shocked to see him that way, so different from they recall him as an active man, but his voice and hers were still there. In 2020 Genesis, Love came back together again. They hadn't seen each other in 13 years. This trip was called The Last Domino, and it spread all over Europe and in North America. There were 47 shows. Between late 2021 and early 2022, his son Nick took over the drums, while Phil paid attention on vocals. It was their last trip. He said he was done with the plague, caused delays, but they got what they began to see Collins on stage. Again, even though everything was emotional, fans were aware that they were seeing the end of a time and a man who wouldn't give up. In 2016, he put out his autobiography Not Still Dead. The heading told you everything you needed to know. Book, he wrote about everything in his happiness, his worries and his health, a fight with alcohol. He had been married 3 times after his third wife left him. He drank a lot because he felt like he had lost everything. His songs, the book didn't talk about his family or his goal. There was nothing he could have done to hide it when he hit rock bottom, but he also made it clear he wasn't done yet.